So hello, once again, and welcome to my no cards build log for Stronghold Kingdoms. Today I'm covering days 72 to 78 in my week in reveal log. Now, to start off simply here, I'm going to go right for the research. I haven't completed very much. Well, there has not been a whole lot of diversity in the researches I've completed, let's say. Starting off with military, I put an additional 2 points of research into Sally Forth for a total of 5. Then if we move down here, you can see I started researching Catapult. This will increase the firing rate of my catapults, and now that the AI castles around my area are getting harder and harder to remove, I'm going to actually have to be using catapults regularly to remove them. And for best results, all my AI attack formations have been optimized for usage with catapults that have the maximum firing rate. So that's why I'm mostly focusing on catapults, because one of the best ways to sort of farm honor when you're at peace with other players is by attacking AI castles. So in addition to the passive honor I've been generating, which once again isn't as high as it could be, I have also been farming plenty of AI castles. So finally, the other research I did was in the education tree. Now, I maxed out the entire branch of architecture, which was a total of 10 points in the last week. And given the fact that my research times are approximately 12 hours now, you can see why it took so long to research it and why I really didn't get to research anything else. Now, the reason for me researching architecture is I really need to rebuild the villages that I have. None of them are tailored towards my research layout, and I've mentioned this prior in previous episodes, but the idea here is that I'm going to reset all my villages to Highland, and then I'm going to set them up for maximum passive honor. And I like Highland. Highland is the best for my layout, and it is also the best if you're going to be a very lazy farmer like I am, who just wants to be able to check in, kill some AIs, and then basically leave the game alone for the rest of the day. Other players have discussed the benefit of the micromanaged economy, which focuses on banqueting, but that's not really for me, and that's not how I started out with. I didn't start out with that playstyle in mind, so I don't have any research into banqueting. I haven't even unlocked the buildings yet, so I'm not planning on going that route, and instead I wanted to quickly build up these villages again to something that I could really use. So right here is the village I'm currently working on. As you can see, I've got the food and the ale production going. Got some faith point buildings up, and of course enough wood and stone to basically continue building the village. It's quite self-sufficient already. And now that my building times are much lower, I'm going to be able to build this village much quicker than my first 3 villages, I know that first village of mine, I wasn't completed building it after, I think it was day 40 when I finally lost it, or day 50, and I still wasn't finished building it. So now with research, or build times I should say, completely or reduced as much as possible in the game, I should be able to build up this village fully within a month, given the opportunity. And of course, if you have a premium token in play, you're going to be able to build it much faster, because you can queue up 5 buildings at the same time to build. And that means that, especially during early building, if you're offline, or if you're for sleeping, whatever activities you have, you're going to be offline. You can queue up a whole bunch of buildings before you leave, and most likely by the time you return, they'll all be finished building. So there has been an expressed interest in sort of what my building and my village layout, my parish layout, and what my castles look like. And given the fact that I'm now at peace currently, I'm sort of at liberty to divulge that information. Now, none of the castles that I currently hold, I have 5 villages. None of these castles were actually castles built by me. So you're going to see quite a variety of designs. There's going to be some real design diversity here. So now this is a castle that I wouldn't have built myself, because as you can see, it uses very weak towers inside it. I modified it slightly so I could actually move the barracks in from the outer wall. Originally, these barracks were pushed all the way out to the corners with just one space of wall between them and the actual white line, which is completely unacceptable for my purposes. Now this castle is probably going to be redone at some point. I'm probably going to be moving the small towers and sort of shifting the great towers over to make room for them. But it's not a bad castle, and at the time when I took it, I was still at war, and this is much easier to defend than a village with no castle whatsoever. So, beggars can't be choosers, essentially, and you make do with what's thrown to you. Okay, here's another village. Now, this village was captured from a former player in House 10. It's for my wine village, and I really haven't modified the castle much. As you can see, right here in front of the keep, there's a lot of space for plenty of pikemen. In the earlier game, or the earlier parts of the game, actually mass piking the keep is very effective because of the lack of catapults. But later in the game, sort of like where we are getting now, I wouldn't expect it to be quite as effective at really repelling attacks. Of course, if you can, because a lot of players will time the attacks on you, and it really won't matter if you have a lot of pikemen in the keep because they will be removed in the attacks prior to the captain attack that arrives last. But if you do manage to be able to intercept that very final attack, usually there will be maybe 3, 4, 5, sometimes upwards of half a minute of time between the nearest army and the actual captain hit. And you can easily throw down a bunch of pikes in front of the keep like this. It's called mass piking the keep. And most likely that'll help ward off the enemies, especially with the use of plenty of smelters. As you can see, I have only 2 smelters here, but that gives me a fair amount of oil to actually use in the defense of the castle. Now, this is a castle given to me by my former faction general, who has since quit the game and apparently has no intent of returning to USA 3. So hedge your bets. Know exactly who you're going to be playing with and their long-term plans, because otherwise you could end up in a situation like I did. The faction that I'm currently in was a faction that was pioneered by a player who I knew from World 5, and since I knew him, I joined up the faction when he offered me. And you sort of run with people, that's the way it works, but he quit, and now some of the other players who also quit with him, that they used to run with him in World 5, they quit as well, and they really didn't think the name of the faction was appropriate anymore, and they really wanted the current faction general to change it. But that's neither here nor there, and it's really quite irrelevant to the point I was making. Anyway, this is one of his castles. As you can see, there aren't many ballistas in it right now, and that's because I've been lazy in regards to upgrading the ballista guild in the parish. As you probably know, especially in worlds less active, kind of like USA 3, not all the counties have actually even opened up yet. There are going to be a lot of really vacant parishes, given the relatively new age of, or given how relatively new the world is. So, with that lack of players in the village and parishes, and the thing is, even when there are more players in the parishes, not all of them are very generous. As a matter of fact, usually it's just the steward who ends up donating to the relevant guilds. Well, so anyway, I was busy donating my weapons to other causes, such as killing AI castles, and I haven't focused on that yet, but as you can see here, I need to really start putting some more ballistas down, given the number of catapults that are now going after these villages. And if you're wondering why there aren't many troops in the wall, it's because they are currently out attacking. So, not attacking any players, don't worry. It's not a bad castle at all. I really don't understand why he used smaller towers right around the keep. It could be because this was one of his earlier villages, and at the time he didn't have great towers unlocked, or it could be a strategy that I'm unfamiliar with, but in my experience with the game, generally you just use great towers all the time because they're the hardest to remove. They can take the most amount of damage. Okay, here we have my number 1 village. Now this is a castle that I took from a player who went inactive a long time ago. It won an attack from House 10. House 10 was originally trying to capture this village from the inactive player when it was inactive. One of their members failed the attack, so the castle stayed, and I believe the player checked back once after that because it was repaired, and I needed a fellow faction member to break it open for me. Now I've held this castle for a while, and while the castle is actually quite decent, the village itself is definitely not what I need, and I'm going to have to convert it. But when it comes to castles, like I said, beggars can't be choosers, and I'll take a castle that's built up not so great, in my opinion, any day over having to build a castle myself and really being at risk of being raised quite easily. When you have a castle like this built up, it's not the best in my opinion, and I believe opinions about castles are quite subjective, but it is very good. And that's the reason that I'll take a village with a castle any day over a village without one, even if it means I have to rebuild the entire thing. Okay, here we have number 2. Now this is a castle, or a village with a castle. It was given to me by a good friend in House 1, or he was in former House 1, now he is in House, 3, I believe. But anyway, yeah, he was trying to consolidate his villages back up east a little bit further, and he let me have this one. Once again, the village type itself is definitely not what I wanted. As you can see, it really focuses heavy on the food production, and I don't have any research in those relevant food types, so I'm not making as much as I could. And the village itself has a lot of empty space, but plains have a lot of empty space, and this is a plains village. And the downside is you also don't get any iron, you have very minimal stone and wood, so it's really not a production house kind of village. Okay, and then of course we're back to the original one. Okay, one other thing I wanted to go over were the parishes, because it's been a while since I covered my parishes, the ones that I own and the ones that I'm in. Now, Baltimore Parish I do not own. So this is a parish that is developed independent of independent of my wishes. And unfortunately there is no ale guild. And I petitioned the steward of this parish to place an ale guild. I even offered to donate flags, but they were somewhat lukewarm to the idea of it. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, right now I'm definitely not making as much ale as I could in those two villages due to the lack of a guild in the corresponding parish. Now, Lebanon is a great parish that was given to me also. Well, it's been given to me. It was before Duke Chris actually gave me the village, the Plains village that I covered a minute ago. And he really built this one up. This is a very sweet parish, and while I don't really use it for attacking or anything, a lot of the guilds are maxed already. A lot of the really important ones are maxed. And as you can see, there are a decent number of barracks and supply depots in here. So this is definitely a parish that is worth hanging on to, because that is one of my weak points, especially as a free-to-play player. Most of my resources go into building my villages or simply into gold. I generally don't have all that many resources to donate, so my parishes are generally weaker. I focus mostly on economy, so while other players would be using their parishes to launch attacks with no honor cost on other players, I couldn't do that in the past war. Finally, my third and final parish, don't say final too much, but Bucks. Now, this once again is a pretty mediocre parish. I placed some guilds that I'm going to have to need to upgrade because I'm the only one who donates in this parish, but pretty much everything that's needed has been placed. The barracks are definitely not where I want them, but that's easy enough to rearrange. And now that I'm moving into a more farming state of it, because I don't know, a lot of the guilds require weapons, and I'm still using the weapons. But as far as wood goes, I can easily donate that. Unfortunately, for guilds that require different food types, I'd have to buy those food types. And I don't have that many merchants because I try to keep a full 400 soldiers in my villages at all times, and believe it or not, it is a little bit difficult to get a liege lord who can reliably station at least 200 archers that you can use in your village. And it usually has to be somebody I trust, because otherwise they can pull out their troops without warning and essentially leave your village vulnerable. I saw this happen when one of my faction members took this village. I believe they raised the village, but it was up here in Snyder Parish, and this village had about probably 25 vassals all connected to it, which just makes the prime target for somebody, because that pretty much cleared out the player's armies. Once you hit that village and you successfully take it over or raise it, a lot of your power is connected to your villages via vassals. So if you connect all your vassals to one village, you're essentially putting all your eggs in one basket, and I would never really recommend that. I'm not sure what the strategy that these players employ is that justifies doing it. Maybe it's just easier to constantly refuel, but gee, I don't know. There's a limit to how fast the peasants can come to a village, and you would think if you were really maxing out the potential of your vassal armies that you would want to really diversify which villages have vassals, so that way you can essentially, all those villages can be producing troops to fill up your vassals. I guess another potential reason for it might be the intimidating look of a village with like 25 vassals all hanging off of it. It is quite intimidating. There used to be one around here somewhere. Apparently Oh yeah, here. This kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like. There were quite a few more on it, but when this is an enemy player and all the players attached to it are enemy players, you look at your little village sitting there and you're thinking, wow, if they launch an attack from each one of those villages, that village there is gone quite easily, you know. It's a very short distance to attack from, too. So, yeah, I'll admit I had my moments of anxiety about it, especially after that village being targeted for excommunication. But this was a couple of weeks ago before we had made peace. So, yeah, this last week has really not been all that eventful. I have been farming again, mostly killing AIs for the honor. Completed a few quests, and now I'm going to be rebuilding my villages to make them villages that I want to keep. So finally, I'm going to be covering the quests that I completed in the past week. Starting from the top, I completed Battle Hardened 4, Silence the Wolves 3, A Blessing 3, Redeemer 1, Healing the Sick 5, and Feasting 4. Not a whole lot of quests completed, but as you can probably guess, the quests are getting a little bit harder to complete all the time as I complete more of them. So lastly, the rank. I'm currently in Earl 5th rank. Basically, I've completed half of the bars to Marquis. So I would say within the next 2 weeks I'll be a Marquis. Hopefully sooner. We'll see how that goes. But so far my research hasn't been neglected. I have been keeping my research queue full, be it through research points obtained by leveling up or by research points that I've actually purchased using gold. So I'd like to put an extra 2 points in mathematics and just max that out before research times get too long, but that'll most likely be done after I finish the research on catapults. As far as the world politics goes, we still have House 10 and House 9 fighting House 16 and House 1. As you can tell, the House 10 House 9 Super Alliance has really gotten quite powerful due to a lot of players who have actually flipped over and joined their alliance. This is regrettable because those players are the fair weather friend kind of players. They used to be House 11. They basically go with whoever is in power at the moment. So things aren't looking too good for House 16, and House 10, House 9 have been putting additional pressure on House 11 given the fact that they are in a position of superiority and we have fought them previous. Some players have been getting eviction notices, some House 11 players have been getting eviction notices from House 10-9 Alliance, asking them to remove their villages from certain counties. So we'll see where all that goes. I wouldn't say tensions are high at the moment, but it's definitely not a completely peaceful scenario for House 11. We are trying to get back on our feet after suffering a humiliating loss due to the alliance breakdown and really the persistence of the House 10, House 9 alliance. But, you know, that's what it is. You really can't... It's what's great and what's terrible about Stronghold Kingdoms all in the same. It's so unpredictable, and yet that's what makes it so utterly fascinating. Well, anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope to see you next time.
Stronghold Kingdoms. The battle has just begun.